Hey, you are listening to the Six Figure Photography Podcast with Ben Hartley, and brand new, my new co-host, Noella Andre. Each week, a new episode is going to air to help you grow your business by winning more bookings, maximizing your profits, breaking through your limiting beliefs. Today, we're just talking to Noella. I want y'all to get to know the rock star that Noella Andre is. She's going to be co-hosting season 3 of this podcast with me. We loved Rachel. She chose to step back, focus on family. It was the right move for her. We love and miss her. And we're going to step into to a new season together. And so Noella Andre, hi. How are you?
Hello. I'm doing so good. Super, super pumped about this season and just doing this with you, Ben.
Yeah. Today we're talking with Noella, not just to getting to know her, but I actually want to kind of extract some of the information from Noella about how you as a photographer can diversify your income. And diversify your income through brand deals, sponsorships, paid brand deals, ambassadorships, short-term, long-term, content creation, getting paid content creation out there. But I just want to help you as a photography community to do that, to just not have all your eggs in the basket of photography. But if you're interested in this, how do you actually secure brand deals? This is like what Noella, I don't want to say you do best, but I think you're a connector at heart, but I think it's one of the things you've got so much experience in. So give us like the high level view of Noella Andre from photographer to like marketing agency owner.
Okay. Started out probably a lot like a lot of other moms out there that are listening. Had a new baby, wanted to, make some money, wanted to get creative, picked up a camera. It started out with me wanting to just take pictures of my kids, but eventually turned into a full-blown wedding photography career. Did that for it feels like forever. I would say like 7-8 years. Had to pivot out of wedding photography because my kids started going to school. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people that will understand this, but the kids were running in the door every day from school and I was running out the door. And this was before Zoom consultations was like an actual thing. And we would go to coffee shops. And so it just felt like every single time the kids were walking in, I was walking out. I knew I had to do something different and pivot. And I think that there's a lot of other people probably in the same situation as this, where they hit some kind of roadblock and they have to figure out how to pivot. And for me, I just was not willing to let go of the wedding photography industry. There's something about this industry. Once you're in it, you can't get out. And so I started doing, just helping other photographers in the back end of their business. It was like a virtual assistant kind of thing. I took a few clients on here and there. And it blew into this whole thing. Next thing you know, I had 50, 70 clients. I had 10 women working for me actually, and a studio downtown and all the things. And, I just adored it because it allowed me to get behind other people's businesses and like a variety, all the different genres and different ways that they were running their business. And, so since then, what really stuck with me was the brand collaboration part. And I think that was something I was super passionate about because it allowed me to teach other photographers or even other moms or, other people how to make other income. Like it almost was like brought me back to when I had to figure out how to pivot out of being a full-time photographer, just that ability to make extra money. Right. And so I think that's kind of why it stuck with me. It's just like another option. You can stay in the industry, you can make this extra money and serve your audience. Right. So I love brand collaborations and I think I'm here forever.
Okay, awesome. Now, are you still actively photographing?
A little bit here and there.
Yeah.
Mostly for brand photography if I'm going to do it. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So you really now, one of the things that I love about you is you help people think bigger than where I think a lot of creatives think, a lot of photographers think, a lot of solopreneurs. Everyone who's listening to this, for the most part, they're solopreneurs. We're just kind of at our kitchen tables doing the thing, Yeah. And you really help photographers think bigger than just how could you monetize a reel on Instagram, but like how could you actually turn like a small ambassador role into something bigger. Is that accurate?
Yeah, no, that's totally accurate. And, I think I can do that because I did virtual assistants and marketing agency for so long. So when I had my marketing agency, I was helping anywhere between 50 and 70 photographers at any given time. I did have a team, so this was not just me. I'm not that crazy. But when you work with 50 to 70 different photographers, you learn so much about the business back end, even the creative side of being a photographer. But I was able to work with family photographers, boudoir photographers, educators, new photographers, different genres. And so and you're looking at the data, right? Like I was looking at data all day long. So I was able to really figure out kind of how the industry ticks, I guess you can say, how it works. And I'm also like, I'm Italian, so I'm super opinionated and I'm just not afraid to like plug in my thoughts wherever I can,
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. Is that something that you still are really focused on doing, is like helping photographers like think through their brand? Are you still doing the marketing agency kind of role of that job?
No, not so much anymore. Like I still do some business coaching, but I think my superpower now is just kind of like connecting people, connecting people with brands.
Yep.
I just love connecting people. I think now, after being in this industry for so long, I really see the importance of community and just like to do as much as I can as far as like connecting everyone. So that's kind of what I do mostly now. Also working a lot with brand partnerships and helping photographers figure out which brands, they can collaborate with and what that looks like. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing mostly now.
That's awesome. I think of you just as a connector. I mean, that's really what you were doing before. Is like you were helping photographers individually kind of connect with brands at large and build those partnerships. And you've really kind of like, you've done that so well for so long that's just like, you are the connector, And so I see you continuing to do it, even if you're not vocationally doing it. It's like, it's what you do. Okay. So
I can't help it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I know so many photographers and they are trying to figure out how to diversify their income, how to not just be making money only when they're behind the camera, right? And so I'm always coming up with ways that they could be doing that. Certainly print is a big one, is selling another product or service to a client that's already paid you once. It's a great way to just make more money. Certainly education is one that we've all kind of considered, thought through, whether that be like, hey, I'm going to make some presets, or I'm going to do a styled shoot, or I'm going to do a full-on workshop or something. But then there's this other category of, and this could fit into the education space, but this other category of like brand deals, like partnering with other industry brands, or technically even outside the industry. And I want to pick your brain on this because I think this is an area that you are an expert in, and it's an area that photographers are really curious about. And also, it feels like complete no man's land. It feels just like weird, gray. Everything is just gray. Everything is gray. There's literally no signs. There's no like, hey, go with this way. There's no map. It's just a whole bunch of gray stuff and people being like, hey, what is this? Right? How do you feel about this? I don't know. So can we talk about that?
It's my favorite topic to talk about.
Okay, cool.
When thinking about brand deals, I think one of the most important things that a photographer should think about is who their clients and who their audience is.
Okay. Makes sense.
And I say that because most photographers, active photographers, the people that are following them and the people that are, connected to them, they are generally maybe brides, grooms, moms, dads, aunts, uncles, right? They're just like everyday people that are interested in hiring a photographer. So I think first it's important to think of who your ideal client is, because if you, not just your ideal client, but who your existing community is, because if you're working with a CRM, your audience isn't going to care about a CRM, right? Like you're not serving your audience by talking about a CRM. So I think that's what's most important, is to kind of think about who your audience is and actually what they want to hear about and see about when it comes to brand collaborations. A bride and groom might want to hear about a collaboration or like a wedding dress designer, for example. That's going to serve them, right? Talking about a CRM isn't going to serve a bride and groom. So that's the first thing I think I challenge people to think about, is who their audience is, and are you still going to serve them by doing a brand collaboration? Once you know who your audience is, make sure that you're also not only thinking about, is it going to serve them, but are you using it? Like, can you talk about it authentically? Because we see these these cheesy influencers on Instagram all day long, and they're talking about like a toothpaste brand. And you're like, do you even use this toothpaste?
Yeah.
Is this really helpful to anyone? So that's like, that's always the first thing. Whenever anyone talks to me about a brand collaboration, I just challenge them, first of all, to look at their audience. And before they get like excited that, say, a CRM asks them to partner with them, just make sure it's serving your audience still, because you don't want to turn away the people that are already like adoring you, right, and following you.
Yeah. Yeah, it totally makes sense. And that's a tricky one, I think, because for most photographers, that really is like their base. You know, their base is their leads, their clients. And I think a lot of photographers are looking at photography educators and thinking, well, yeah, I want a partnership with ProPhoto, you know, but like photography educators are kind of like, they're in like their own world, like their audience tends to be other photographers, right? Yeah, and so like it doesn't really like line up. And so in a lot of ways, I think for the active photographers that are listening, like it probably really does make a lot more sense to try to land a brand deal with another local business in your community. Do you agree with that, Noella?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think if you are interested in collaborating with brands like ProPhoto and things like that, first take the time to start serving other photographers, because your audience will then start pivoting, right? Then all of a sudden you're going to start getting other photographers following you, and they're going to find a brand collab like ProPhoto valuable to them.
Yeah.
So I think before you go jumping into a deal, and I mean, I say this all the time with marketing, you have to serve that audience first. So first start serving other photographers before you start taking money from, brands. But yeah, 100%, like, especially if there's family photographers listening, like start thinking about ways you can serve moms and dads. Maybe it's a brand collaboration with like a maternity baby shop, or, like a toy store or something like that. Like start there and then start serving other photographers before you start taking photography brands.
Yeah. So what do brands actually want from like photographers in this type of like a partnership ambassador role? And maybe this depends, certainly on, well, obviously on the brand, but even the niche itself. Like, are we talking more of the photography industry? Are we talking maybe smaller, more local businesses that serve your niche? But like in general, maybe what are brands actually looking for? Is it just numbers? Is it just like, hey, this person has, 50,000 followers. What do they want?
No. And you know what? And it's funny because that is, I think, a huge misconception. Yep. I think people think that they need to have a ton of followers to get brand deals. To be honest, most brands have access to softwares that will tell you how many of your followers are real. It tells you what your engagement rate is and things like that. So, I mean, I've heard of photographers buying followers thinking they're going to get brand deals. Brands can see right through that. So for me, I think, again, it's more about serving. Like if I'm speaking on behalf of a brand, if I'm looking at a photographer and I want to collaborate with them, what I'm looking for is engagement levels, do they serve their audience? And just, I want to work with really authentic photographers, right? Like like I said, like the whole toothpaste thing, like there's a difference between a content creator and an active serving photographer that is wanting a brand collaboration. Like, I'm not interested in the influencers that are going to dance around with a bottle of toothpaste. I want to work with the ones that are actually serving the community, because their audience is going to trust them. Right. And that's big with brand collaborations. Yeah. You definitely want like the right audience.
Yeah. I've gotten a lot of pitches, right? So a lot of, well, I'll pay you X amount to make a reel. Kind of these one-time collaborations. And I've entertained a few, right? Like, okay, I mean, because I like you, I know you, I trust you, I'll do it or something. And again, but now everything's gray. And so like, how do I then, let's say I do this for a company that I'm like, this was great. I created some sort of collaboration. How could, someone take a one-time instant like that, right? You get the DM, hey, we'd like to sponsor a reel or something, and actually turn that into something more than that, something that's actually like a long-term partnership. Like, what's the process like to navigate those waters?
I think most brands actually want a long-term relationship. Like I mean, it's so much less work, right? Like for me to have for me to have to find 10 people who are going to do an Instagram reel, I'd rather find one person who's going to do 10 Instagram reels. So I think most brands go into most relationships wanting a long-term relationship. for sure. And I think that the majority of them will start with one offer. And the reason why they do that is because they want to test it, right? They want to see what's the engagement on this post. Do we like working with this person? Does their community trust them? Are they authentic? Are they funny? You know, do they relate to the brand? All those kind of things. So I do think most brands will start with one, like a reel, but they do want long-term. And I think that I think just being yourself, like, I think I can tell when I work with someone who I'm just paying them one time to do one reel, you can tell there's just this different vibe. They're more sales pitchy. It's almost like they try too hard, but if you're just authentic, I think brands notice that right away. That's really it. I mean, as long as it's like authentic and the brands jive, you're likely, we want to work with you long-term. And I think that's important to go into it, knowing that it's just something we want. Yeah. But we're just testing the waters.
And it'd be appropriate to like make your desires known, right? Like, I think it's appropriate for a photographer to present it and like to blow them out of the water with the initial work, to potentially even line up like additional things and say, hey, I also went ahead and I did this, you know, is this something that we could talk about?
100, like, when they do the work for me and they send me an email with like, hey, I have like 10 ideas. Can we make magic happen? I'm done. Yeah. Like that. So yes, 100%. Like even after that single post, like if you get that one single offer, sending a follow-up with a proposal on like, hey, I really enjoy doing this. This is what I see I can do for you. Maybe long-term, like maybe 3 blog posts every quarter or a reel or a YouTube video, whatever it is. If you know your community best and you know what you do best. So do not be afraid to send some kind of proposal or follow-up for sure.
Yeah. Now, this is niche specific, brand specific, I'm sure. But like, what are all the variables like out there in terms of, you know, paid sponsorship, partnerships with brands? When I say variables, like all of the levers that a photographer could pull for a brand. For example, we're obviously all aware of like, well, we've got Instagram. We got, well, you can make a reel for someone. You know, now we've got TikTok going on here, but like back in the day, it'd even be like blogging. I don't really know if that's relevant anymore. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that, Noella. But like,
my goodness.
Yeah. So what are the variables? What are all the levers that someone could like pull in terms of offering something for a brand?
Okay, I'm going to challenge you and say blogging for sure, because blogging is evergreen, right? And so for the audience who doesn't know what evergreen means, think of an evergreen tree. It lasts forever. It stays green forever. It's relevant forever. Blogs, Instagram reels are one thing because they generally lose their excitement, I guess you can say, after a short period of time, right? They're like more short term, but a blog can live forever. I mean, as long as you keep your website subscription active, guys. But the blog will last a long time. And if you optimize it correctly, it's gold. It lives on the internet forever. The other thing too, that a lot of brands I know of really love is Pinterest. And I think not a lot of photographers spend a lot of time on Pinterest, but Pinterest is like a search engine. And if you use a Pinterest graphic and you direct that traffic to your blog posts, it's like super valuable, right? Because now we got the search engine, we got it optimized, we have this blog post that lives forever. And newsletters, if you have an email list, if you don't, you guys should get one. And this is a whole other
conversation we'll hit on for sure. Yeah.
Don't have an email list, but if you do, definitely using that email list. And again, you could take that one blog post and you're recycling it on Pinterest, you're recycling it now, sending it out to your newsletter list. And then of course there's social media. I know YouTube also, because YouTube is a little bit more evergreen, right? It lasts forever, super valuable for a brand. And then some of the other things even is just like, hey, you're doing a workshop, reaching out to a brand and asking for sponsorship. That's a very common one. Speaking on stages, asking for sponsorships for that. So I think they're all valuable in their own way. I also think it depends on the brands and if they have very specific campaigns going on. So don't be afraid to ask a brand like, hey, do you have a specific campaign or a new feature that's launching that I can help you with? And they'll have an idea of what they need.
Yep. And podcasts. The thing I like about podcasts is because you got to host a podcast on a blog. So it's like you've got a blog, it's got a podcast, it's got show notes. You take that podcast, you put it on YouTube, you cut it up, you put it on Reels, you make pins and you share those pins. And so like it just becomes all the big
whole thing.
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
I just literally was on a stage talking about this, like marketing and like repurposing and recycling content. And it's crazy to me that like, I think people think that they have to like now I'm going on a tangent, but I think people think they have to sit down and automatically, right, think of like, hey, what am I going to post on Instagram today? No, if you start with like a podcast, YouTube, blog, that's like your hero content.
Yep.
Anyways, okay.
We should do a whole other side episode, just Noella, you and I talking a bit more about that as well. Okay, so on this topic of helping photographers land brand deals, diversify income, and maybe we'll wrap with this, is the other area of diversification for income, which is getting into education, right? Like a photographer getting into to teaching, to presenting, to courses, to workshops, to speaking. So how can someone really know if they're ready for that? Because I think this is a big question, right? I think this is a big question that a lot of photographers have. They see through rose-colored glasses, just like opportunity, right? And then, and it's just so easy, right? So I'm sorry, I see this a lot, but how does a photographer know if they're ready to start getting into the education side?
I think there'll be signs in the fact that like other people are going to start asking you questions like, how are you doing that? How are you booked? What's your editing style? Like, how do I achieve that editing style? I think as soon as people start asking you, you need to ask yourself if you feel confident enough in that topic to start educating. Because the thing is, once you start educating, you're in it, right? Like you're now going to start building that following of other photographers who know that you are educating and who are going to look to you. So I think, just pay attention to the signs and also just like do a check-in with yourself and ask if this is like the route that you really want to go down. Because again, like we were saying, your audience starts to pivot, right? You're going to start, as the more you start educating, the more your audience turns into photographers instead of the brides and grooms and things like that. So just keeping note of that.
Yeah. The other feedback that I would say is you don't have to be all things for all people. Like you could begin educating, like you don't have to have even a 6-figure business, but if you have a really amazing workflow for, well, let's just go to Pinterest that you absolutely love and people are curious about, like, and you become an expert in that, like that could be something that you choose to educate on. And you don't have to pretend like you're everything else, right? You could just
100%,
focus in on these one areas. But I would say at large, it's like you've got to do it first, like you've got to actually show that you've done the thing.
Like once I can confidently say I'm an expert, like if someone asks me and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a marketing expert, that's when I'm like, okay, I know it enough now that I can start teaching it, right? Yeah. You have to be very confident in what you're about to start teaching.
I would actually go so far as to say, if you're asking yourself, am I ready to start teaching? You're not ready. Like, cause you would just wake up bleeding. Like you would just, you just know, like, like you walk in a room and you're like, I know more than you. Like about this one thing, right? Like I know less about everything else in the world, except for this one little thing about Pinterest that, and so if you're asking yourself, you probably shouldn't, at least not ever, but just like not right now.
Yeah, not yet.
Not yet. Exactly. Cool. Well, Noella, I'm really excited. I'm excited just to have you on board, to have the audience get to know you here just a little bit better. And listen, you've ran a marketing agency. You're a marketing agency owner for the last, decade. This is what you do. And you bring so much value to this podcast. And so I cannot wait to continue to pick your brain, to ask you all the questions, to dig in, even all of the knowledge that you have working in this industry across so many businesses and companies, and having your hands involved in so many photographers' actual business. Like you've really seen more than even an expert in one particular thing would see. You've gotten to see how hundreds of photographers do all the different things, and now we get to extract all that.
I'm so excited. I know. I'm so excited. And I love to talk. So I'm very excited to talk about marketing.
Awesome.
Marketing business. Yeah.
Good.
Super pumped.
Well, Noella, do you have any final sign-offs here? Do you have any place you want to send people? I mean, you're the co-host, so you can send people wherever you want. Do you want to send them anywhere at the end of the episode? What do you want to do?
I guess my Instagram. You can go check me out at Noella Andres. Other than that, we're here to help your community, Ben. We're going to serve your audience, and it's going to be awesome.
Cool. My community is your community. Let's do the thing. So we had this thing with Rachel and I, where at the end of every episode, I would say, something along the lines of like, thank you for listening to the 6-Figure Photography podcast. Until next week, keep showing up. And then Rachel had her own little tagline. And I'm curious if you want your own little tagline here. Hers was, and I love hers. I may need to continue hers because I love it so much. I actually may like hers more than mine because she would say in the wonderful Rachel voice, "And be kind to yourself." I loved it.
Oh my goodness, that is so cute.
It was the
Okay,
best.
Give me until the next episode.
To the next episode.
About this. I have to, yeah. How do I beat that one?
I know.
I need to put some thought into this.
That's what I'm saying. I think I may need to say, keep showing up, be kind to yourself, and then we could just add on to it. Because I want to honor Rachel in that. I don't want to replace it.
Let's do it.
So, hey, everybody, thank you for listening to this Six Figure Photography podcast. Until next week, keep showing up and be kind to yourself. And we'll see what Noella has for us next week.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Sounds good. Bye.